Fragments of Silicon, guaranteed not to abolish your suburbs.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Let's see, Alex, why don't you start us off to update us on your internet?
Thankfully, they came on Friday as expected and were properly equipped to handle it. They had one of those trucks they use to go up and fix stuff on power lines and poles and stuff because apparently the situation I was having is far from unique. So yeah, it was the next door neighbors who got struck. I actually haven't checked with my parents if our landline is or garage door opener is fixed. I think the garage door opener is still not working because they said something about like a month wait for that possibly because busy electricians and stuff, I guess. But otherwise, everything is pretty much back to normal here. Just had a feeling better than I was last week, certainly. Otherwise, not really a whole lot going on. What was it that came out?
In terms of...
I think I picked something up, but well, an interesting thing is hopefully I'm gonna set aside a little bit of time since my dad used to play video games with me when I was young, and we're gonna see if he would like to play Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, how that goes. Hopefully this weekend, but we'll see.
Oh man, bonding.
Indeed.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing particular. I'll tell you if I think of anything.
Well, we're moving on. So,
right.
Twilight.
Let's see now. It's been hot and miserable here. Thought we was gonna get some rain today. We got a small shower, and that was about it. Didn't really do squat. Now the mandatory mask wearing order has been holding up here fairly well. I think people's been coming back from vacation, and positive cases of COVID have been on the rise because of that. Not really much going on otherwise. Just been doing my best to stay home when I can, and I just been playing the game for this week, and that's about it.
All right. Well, Betty, you're up.
Not a whole lot to report. Over the weekend, I was able to snag a pre-owned PS4 controller at a GameStop to replace my one that the wireless is going bad on. So, hooray! And yes, I did wipe it down with Lysol wipes a few times.
Good man.
Indeed.
And I decided to start playing. I think it's Rise of the Tomb Raider because it was free on PlayStation Plus. So I figured, why not? And so far, it's better than the first one. Mainly because they toned down the the particles, because, oh my god, the particles in the first one was blinding as hell. And yeah, just been kind of doing stuff and things. And whatnot.
All right, then it's my go. Let's see. I guess the big news is dealing with bit of a rat problem. Thankfully, not in the main domicile, but the tool shed. A rat got into the tool shed,
Oh, fun.
and an exterminator had to come out the other day. He laid a couple of traps. Hasn't gotten the rat yet, as far as I know. Haven't checked it today, so hopefully that gets resolved. And it's not just, and it's just one rat in there, because 2 rats could equal more rats.
Mm,
And a complete utter nightmare.
trust me, I went through this hell because our house is near a sewer drain.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so if a rat is found in one of the traps, we give a call to the exterminator, and he'll take care of things from there. Granted, it's more disposal, because poisoned meat's been put in those traps
Mm,
in order to entice said rat into said space. Also, a couple of traps have been set outside in case there are more rats in the area. And thankfully, they're not. It's not a threat to my cat. So, but aside from that, it's also been rain, and more rain.
almost like you live in Florida or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that people don't know about Florida. Like, sure, it's hot during the summer, that's a given, but it's also very, very rainy. Like, it hasn't not rained for weeks.
And we're all growing gills, right?
See, I'd make an Alanis Morissette joke, but you live in Florida, so it's totally expected, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, and yeah, that's about it for my news this week. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is James Deighan of Megacat Studios.
Dude, that was a great pronunciation.
We were unsure how that was gonna go.
Yeah, you had like a 10% chance of nailing it first time. You should play the lottery tonight.
Sometimes that doesn't end up so well. Like,
Well, it sounds like you're already winning if the cats are safe from the rats.
Anyway, how we like to get started is we like to get to know the person behind the game, behind the studio, behind whatnot, and we do that by asking them what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level.
Oh, it's a good question. So I think they're pretty similar. I'm sure that's an often response, but for many of our team members, the era of gaming that inspired us to eventually be active in the games industry was that 8 and 16-bit cartridge world. I think of the Nates and Max, like our early conversations were all rooted around that retro ethos and what we love about that era of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can see that reflected in a lot of our products. We take the retro sensibilities and add in some modern game design.
Indeed, that's not a surprise, since Megacat Studios specializes, I guess, in making not just like retro styled games, but actual games that are played on retro systems, Sega Genesis, NES, and whatnot.
Oh yeah, we do the authentic 8 and 16-bit legit stuff too.
Right. And how did you get started in the industry?
I think like a lot of indies, one day we just decided to make a game, and then we eventually had a game that we wanted to release, and the grand vision really came after a few stumbling blocks and learning lessons and all that good stuff that comes when you're new to a big and different, constantly changing space. Games is definitely a hit-based industry that's full of so many different types of gameplay and genres, and there's really a place for every game with every user type. And at the end of our deep learning lessons, we started thinking about all the wild opportunity that exists right now and how there's a space for the games we would love to make to find an audience. So we just kept doubling down with that idea in mind, and now we have a pretty killer team and a lot of cartridges and cats.
Right. I think that came up last time. Like
About the cats or the cartridges?
Cartridges, definitely. We had Zachary Mankow of a few years ago.
Yeah. Zach's much more well-spoken and handsome than I am.
Well, luckily we don't have a video component, so how handsome you are doesn't matter.
That's why I jumped on. I was like, well, this is easy for me. We'll just put the.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so have you been with Mega Cat since the beginning?
Yeah, you could say that. I was one of the early team members for sure.
Mm. And like, what was your first project at Mega Cat? Was it the Coffee Crisis?
It was. Yeah, there's many pieces and bits that happened in between there, but I guess the first more major for us release was Coffee Crisis, which, funny origin stories. It was originally a project for somebody, and they kind of abandoned the project themselves, and we took it over. And then we were just trying to make the best of a strange series of events, and it actually ended up turning into a really notable piece for our small piece of the world. Eventually, the Genesis version turned into an Xbox One version and Nintendo Switch, and even this year it was released on PS4. Lots of cool stuff with Twitch, and so many things happened throughout that game's life cycle that really changed Mega Cat substantially, and it's probably the game that we're least proud of that has picked up a lot of natural players, and I'm really excited to have everyone that played Coffee Crisis check out Bite the Bullet.
Indeed. We'll get to Bite the Bullet in a bit, but before that, I think we should cover Logjammers, since I recall that's the game we mainly talked about a few years ago, and it recently came out.
Yeah, so it's in Steam Early Access. Right now we're finishing the final bits and pieces for the console release on the Switch. And it's very very easy to pick up and play, whether you're doing the 2-player co-op or doing a one-man tournament to polish your axe tossing skills. It's kind of our ode to Pong with a little more juicy, faster gameplay. And if you're a fan of Windjammers, you can think of Logjammers as Windjammers with a much faster speed and a lot of interesting power-ups and items that keep it fresh and open up a lot of other possibilities.
Right. And what state of early access is the game in on Steam?
It's in the state where you can pick it up and play it and have the whole game, and it's just waiting on the console bits to get through.
And is there anything in particular holding up the console releases or anything?
Yeah, I guess COVID. So during the during the early COVID era, they changed all the normal console certification to require an additional manual opt-in for remote certification. It just slowed down anything that was in the pipeline there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like,
how it is.
COVID's affected a lot, and hopefully, it gets resolved sooner rather than later. But
well, I'm holding out strong for a nice and clean 2021, but I'm not holding my breath for 2020.
Well, we're about half done with 2020. We'll see if it gets a redemption arc in the second half. But yeah, not holding my breath. And anyway, now in terms of the NES version of Logjammers, is that still a thing that's in production?
Oh yeah, we ship out Logjammers cartridges every week. There's a lot of jammers living everywhere right now.
I can imagine. Um, and like, I assume COVID's affected that kind of production as well.
Yeah, I guess COVID has affected everything. It's, if you're looking at what we do with the cartridges, there's definitely a lot of physicality with going to the office, like shipping, fulfilling orders. So we had lost a step or so as far as speed goes, but we always were able to keep up on orders because I'm lucky that I live just a few minutes away. And I'm not putting anyone at risk going in independently and packing up our friends and fans cartridges, because really so many of them were passing that COVID time by playing games. So if we can bring a little extra light into that space, and packing boxes is something I'm probably best at on the team. I'm a major box packer.
I'm like, all those hours of Boxel are finally paying off.
I've been preparing for it for 34 years. I've only been able to really show this skill during COVID.
You never know what comes in handy until the situation arises, I guess. Anyway, so moving forward, before we get to bite the bullet, we got another game to mention here, and that's Phantom Gear.
Yeah, have you guys tried the demo or checked it out?
I haven't had time to do that.
It's okay. I'm not going to hold it against you. Just curious what the talking points were. So Phantom Gear is something I'm also excited about. So our friends at Bit Rules have been working on it for just about a year now. It's nearing its, I guess, 75% or so completion point. We have some really exciting new Phantom Gear news that'll be top of mind come early September. And we've definitely taken the original concept that was funded successfully on Kickstarter and really doubled down with the creative and the gameplay to make it something I think players are really going to love. The demo's been really well received. Tons of positive feedback from retro fans and platformer fans everywhere.
Oh, that's good to hear. And for the uninitiated, what is Phantom Gear?
So I like to describe Phantom Gear as like a really tight controlling platformer with a little bit of world building attached. So definitely the right recipe of what makes a platformer on a Mega Man run and gun or a Sonic game fun on the Genesis. It very much speaks to that blast processing vibe of Sega with the wild Sega kind of neon 90s palette and the really, really tight feeling controls that give a player a little more confidence and a little more, I want to say, control over what they can do within that universe.
Kind of reminds me of like a treasure game.
Yeah, Treasure's a good call out.
Yeah. And is this an actual Genesis game, or is this something being released for modern consoles, or both?
So right now, just Genesis. We have some other bits and pieces that are going to be announced come September, but it'll have some other releases as well once we get through this very first important leg.
And what is it like developing a Sega Genesis game in the year of 2020?
Yeah, you take all of the exciting and fun parts of game development, and then you make it a little bit harder and slower.
I assume the dev tools for old consoles are like available now.
Yeah, but not the dev consoles. So there's quite a few different like community built tools and compilers and that actually make it very accessible. So for Genesis, SGDK is really common. You can make great games using SGDK, but Phantom Gear is actually all like hard coded in assembly. And what you're really missing, if you're looking at things like error handling and feedback and different types of diagnostics, is you're missing development kits. So not having access to an actual hardware development kit means a lot of emulation-based testing, followed by some hardware-based testing that you just hope you can troubleshoot on. So
I would imagine that not having like just coding and like assembly there, it's much harder to do even like sanity check, bug checking.
Yeah, I mean, assembly is also not say C.
Right. It's really easy to miss something. the further away the language you're coding in is away from something that you can like natively understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, we actually have 2 robots in the team that help us whenever the going gets tough.
Robots?
You know, more robot than man. Like Andy, as an example, very much defines himself as a robovore. So that makes the machine code a little more accessible for me as a leg up.
I see. And like, what about like cartridge production? Is that something that's more difficult than producing an NES cartridge in this day and age, or about the same?
The cartridge production really isn't that wild. It's there's a few options for programmable PCBs. So we
Mhm.
do hand assembled through hole. We're soldering them and making them ourselves, but you have your IC chip programmer and you attach your other components like your flash memory or your battery save, and next thing you know, you have a fully realized hardware game living and breathing on your console.
Yeah, if you were trying to pull this off 30 years ago, Sega would have had a fucking cow.
Yeah, you know what? There's actually a lot of interesting history where a few people did that, like notably EA, where they made their own cartridge and did their own bits and kind of had Sega against the wall and came to terms on it. That's where those yellow kind of highlighted square cartridges came from.
Yep.
Yeah. Though the big one was Accolade.
Oh yeah, big time. And really, like the Sega's always been, and the reason that happened, by the way, is Sega's always used easier to access, modular, kind of modern parts, whereas Nintendo's always gone really far out of their way to keep things super proprietary.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Which,
NES cartridges were like
Yeah.
proprietary. They didn't even let you make your own cart. Like you had to like buy them from them
Yeah.
to use originally, didn't they?
This, by the way, is how Atari 2600 games came to the ColecoVision. Atari used, just generalized parts. But we're getting a bit off track here.
Sorry.
I feel like we're getting on track. That was good.
Well, it's like in terms of video game history, sure, but we don't like to veer too much on a tangent. Anyway, now in terms of mega power, how big is Phantom Gear here?
In Mega Power?
Like, okay, that's the like measurement designation Sega used for how big their Genesis games were.
Back in the day.
Yeah,
You know, I haven't measured things in Mega Power often, but I'd bet we're pretty up near the limit. It's definitely every inch and corner and crevice of every bit is going to be packed to the limit with the way the game's being built. So that's kind of working backwards from the space is always the big puzzle we're solving with any of these games. It's things like the horizontal scanline limits and the total cartridge capacity. We do have some really neat MegaCat tech that allows us to put a little more juice into any given cartridge. And there's definitely a really interesting project that's under development that's unrelated that takes the total limit, multiplies it by about 8 to have it be a giant sized Sega game.
To like 32-bit.
Even up a notch from that.
Wow. Like, I'm not sure if like a game of that size was ever released for like the Genesis when it was alive. Like, but then again, that's something I have to look into off.
Yeah, it didn't. Not during the era. The biggest aftermarket game was Pierre Solar, and there's a Street Fighter pirate game, and it was really big custom mapper. But
Right.
During the era, that was not conceivable yet, and probably cost prohibitive based on the components being used.
Oh yeah, like God, one of the Phantasy Star 4, one of the biggest games released back in the day, was $100 when it was new, because it took up so much memory. That was mainly the case with RPGs back then. Yeah, that's over and done with. But anyway, moving forward, I suppose it's time to talk about Bite the Bullet. And indeed, what is Bite the Bullet?
So Bite the Bullet is the world's first run and gun and eat. So take all of the easy to pick up run and gun action of a Metal Slug or a Contra, then add some modern game design and some unique kind of genre bending twists. So we have 4 character classes, each built around your nutritional choices and what you eat within the game. So the Gorivore is your carnivore class, the most heavy metal vegan ever, the slaughterer of the soil. Of course, you have your Omnivore. He's the I see, I eat. He has the infinite appetite. And then Robovore, I'd mentioned, he only eats metal and robots, which it's a natural evolution for mankind.
I'm like getting a lot of iron in his diet.
And there's definitely a lot of nutrition and food-based theming and puns within the universe. So you can imagine that if you have this player decision of shooting them, stunning them, and eating them or slaying them, there's a lot of cool perks that must be attached to slowing down that action adventure gameplay. So in this game, eating unlocks crafting, it unlocks different abilities for each skill class to use that really changes how they move and stack their skills within the game. And that changes the strategies based on how you like to play and what your play style is.
Now, when you say eat, is the food like actually the bullets, or is the food like laying around, like a Final Fight game or something like that?
So if you watch the sizzle, you see a little bit eating happening as you shoot enemies. They become stunned, and once they're in a stun state, you can devour the enemies.
And what happens if you eat something that's not in your class's diet?
Well, you don't get the perks, and in some cases, you might vomit.
So
no
real life.
Yeah.
There's also like some rancid food. It's maybe not so
I
fresh.
call vomiting a penalty, Adam.
Well, I mean, a penalty to your stats.
Yeah, so there's no penalty to the stats, but you do vomit, so you don't get the perks, and the perks are what it's all about.
And what do the 4 classes offer up in terms of like actual gameplay?
So each skill tree that's unique to each character class has a lot of custom abilities that are exclusive to that class. And sometimes it's how you move, it's how you attack. It's every facet of that character's building, right? It's defense and shields and many different emergent things that change based on which skill tree nodes you have unlocked. And if you watch a little bit of the devlogs we had and look at some of the blogs on our website, we dive a little deeper into those. But about 75% of that content is all not yet announced or shown, and I think people are really going to have fun with it.
Well, that's always the hope, isn't it?
It's for sure the hope.
Yeah. Anyway, so like in terms of story, what's going on in this game? Who are these fighting Foodons, and what are they fighting for?
So most of the game story has not been announced or released. Anyone that's played it at TwitchCon or PAX or any other events, they're a little bit familiar with Darwin Corp. So it's this neo-rogue futuristic era. You're playing as Chewie or Chuella, the heroes that have bioimplants that are set off on this path to capture DNA samples, and on the behalf of this government entity. So as that game, obviously there's a lot of cool stuff that happens as that game story unfolds, but that's the original logline and player motivation of why Chewie and Chuella are taking this action hero positioning and eating all of these things.
I see. And in terms of how do I put this? Now, in terms of like release, is this a pure modern game, or like are you having a say Genesis version of this game release as well?
So this game's modern only, but there is a prequel that we're working on that'll be exclusive to the Genesis.
And is it going to feature similar gameplay?
Well, the prequel it's obviously in the same universe. It is a different genre. So that game's actually like a true Metroidvania. So definitely some similarities, but a lot of differences. Totally different players, but it kind of builds upon that Bite the Bullet universe lore.
I see. And shifting into the gameplay elements, I think you mentioned that this is having some roguelike elements as well.
I can't spoil too much, but there's definitely a lot of rogue elements for things like different enemies having different buffs, different special abilities that could be tied based on how lucky you are, unlucky with the guns that spawn.
Does that extend to the levels themselves? Like, are they randomly or procedurally generated, or are they handcrafted?
The levels are all handcrafted, but we have some unique systems for level teleporters and little power-up rooms that are all random.
And is this a roguelike or a roguelite?
I'd say it's really a genre-bending version of neither. There's no permadeath. There's no procedurally generated levels, so it's definitely not a rogue like. But it has I'd say the same way people describe games with RPG elements that aren't RPGs, this has rogue elements.
That makes sense. I'm like, probably a rogue light. That's the one where you have permanent upgrades. Like Rogue Legacy. Because I'm assuming that your characters have levels and they upgrade those throughout the course of the game.
You got it.
And let me see here. How many players can play it? Like, is this a 2-player, 4-player game? And is that online or local only?
It's 2-player local, and there are some additional Twitch interactives for streamers, but no online gameplay.
We actually understand that because this is a 2D run and gun, and latency would definitely be a factor.
Yeah, and when the game was originally conceived, it was very much built around the most fun parts of that run and gun retro style game, and then how do you make that game kind of go to the next level with modern game design sensibilities. And as we move through it, we really thought closely about what an online experience might look like, and I think it actually takes away from some of the couch co-op moments we want to craft, and really the single player content. That's definitely where I see most of the people picking up and having fun.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of modes, is it just like the story campaign, or are there going to be other modes, like a versus mode, for example?
Yeah, this one's all story driven, so it's a single player experience in most cases. But the 2-player allows you to go through the campaign as well. But there's no 1v1 or any other game modes. Very much what you would expect with like platformers and things of that nature.
Yeah. And in terms of modern console releases, is it coming to everything?
So it's currently announced for Switch, Xbox One, PS4, and next year it'll be coming to PS5 as well.
Interesting. Like, it's like I'm imagining that you can't really talk about PlayStation 5 development at this point.
Not quite yet, but I think most devs who are really active already on the PS4 side of things are already really relieved to see that it's not too different.
That's good to hear. And in terms of PC release, is this game coming to Windows only, or are there going to be builds for Mac and Linux?
Oh, for sure, Mac and Linux. Well, let's say 100% Linux and like 60% Mac.
Interesting.
That really hasn't been a ton of Mac users historically in our other games, and when we were doing a lot of testing with our Discord community and some of our social media following, the Mac builds really never make a big impact, and there's so many players are just expecting Windows and Linux. Whereas the Linux community, despite being pretty small, is very vocal, very active, and has really supported us since our first game.
That doesn't surprise me at all. That jives up with other stories from other developers.
We're all in the same world, man.
Yep. Now, in terms of storefront, is this game coming to Steam only, or is it going to be like released on GOG?
It's definitely coming out on GOG. It's actually on another dozen or so PC storefronts, and ranging from your Green Man Gaming up to some of those DRM cloud places like the Twitch Prime and Utomic. So it'll be making its rounds. And if anyone wants to play it anywhere, they'll likely be able to pick it up.
EGS?
Well, I don't want to spoil everything here, but anything could happen.
Okay. And I suppose my final question is, when can people expect to hear more news on Bite the Bullets?
So next week, we're going to be announcing the final launch date. It's coming up very soon. Last week, we just announced the physical arcade cabinet that'll be released. So lots of developments are all going to be coming to a final head and final moment in the next week here. If you want to follow any of that, just go to megacatstudios.com, or if you're a Discord user, discord.gg/megacat.
Okay. I'll see if my colleagues here have any final questions for you.
I think I piped in when I had anything.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, then. All right, James, it was wonderful having you on our program and for you to take time out of your schedule and being with us here tonight. I like what I see so far out of Bite the Bullet, and I'm looking forward to hearing more details of the game. Anyway, so the game is Bite the Bullet. Has any sort of pricing been determined yet for it?
Yeah, it's $14.99.
Okay.
And currently in the Xbox demo event, going to be up for pre-sales next week as well on consoles. So lots and lots of content for that range, and I think we created something that we're really, really proud of, that people have really responded well to.
Okay. And current planned release date is Q3 2020. Be sure to tune into their various channels next week for more information on that. Until then, you can go and wishlist this game on Steam. Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. This week we're talking about Cave Story. No particular reason why we want to talk about Cave Story. It's more, we know there's news happening this week, but the big news is tomorrow. The big Xbox showcase is tomorrow at noon Eastern, but it's not tomorrow, and it's not noon Eastern, so we got to find something to talk about, and this thing seemed to be as good as any. Now, I'm hoping that all of our viewers are familiar with Cave Story, but there's a good chance that that's not necessarily the case, because, Cave Story in real terms is actually pretty damn old at this point. Like, that may stun a lot of people, but here's the thing. The original version of Cave Story came out in 2004.
Which, according to our math, is old enough ago to have a driver's license in most states, as old as that makes me feel.
Hell, if you want to really feel old, that qualifies this game as a legit retro game.
And meanwhile, all of our hairs are turning gray.
Now, then, give it a few more years. It's not that far off from being considered to be vintage, classic, whatever you
Although
want.
it is styled to look even older than it is. But yeah, either way, this is arguably the first of what became popularly known as indie games.
Arguable, or at least, I have heard people use that term before.
It's certainly not the first independent game, but it's a game that established a lot of the trends that are on the list of what defines the common style of the indie game.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Like even to this day, like just go and look at the Steam store on any given day, and a Cave Story casts a long shadow. Not the only one by any means, but you got, once again, Cave Story came out in 2004. There really wasn't a thing like this in 2004. No, at least not on PC, not on consoles. Like this kind of game was pretty much regulated to like handhelds. Like this is the kind of thing that got released for the Game Boy Advance. If it wanted any actual limelight attention, at least usually. And I do think that's another reason why Cave Story became so renowned. It's not just when it's not just when it released and where it released, but how it was released. Because once again, the original version of Cave Story was freeware. In fact, it's still freeware. You can go to cavestory.com and download the original version of Cave Story for no money.
I forget, was this for Windows or was it from one of the weird Japanese computer formats?
Once again, this was for Windows because
Okay.
those things weren't really alive by now. Okay, the game got released in 2004, but if you want another modern parallel, this was developed by one guy who he
including
did
the music and stuff.
Yeah, he, usually when we have a a one dev studio on our program, they'll mention that maybe some stuff was outsourced, maybe the writing, most often the music. This guy did everything, like the programming, the coding, the music. That's really one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not often you have a dev that does everything in this day and age. But that's actually more in keeping with the tradition of independent PC development. Not even all this got started in the 80s and the 70s with a lot of amateur coders.
Yes. Here's the thing. I was thinking of how Toho Project started with other system things, but that was a bit before. This Toho went to Windows in 2001. So.
Right. I mean, I guess the PC-98 was still a thing in '99, but this was always for Windows.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't think Cave Story would have worked on the PC-98. At least, not what they were going for, because it's got a better color palette than your average PC-98 game.
Mm-hmm.
Although not really color depth. But
no.
That's just part of the style. And again, what is currently being shown on screen is the updated version.
Yeah. Because Cave Story was freeware, and also it got unofficially ported to a whole bunch of systems because once again it was freeware. But then in 2010, I believe, Studio Nicholas offered to port, officially not just port the game to WiiWare, but update the graphics. And thus was born the legacy of Cave Story Plus. Indeed, the graphics are probably the biggest updates. It's also got remix soundtrack. I think that they put a new area in the game. There's a bunch of other modes. It is definitely the plus of the Cave Story. But at its core, it's still the same Cave Story. Just the difference is now you have to pay ostensibly $14. Mind you, Cave Story Plus has been on sale a bunch of times, featured in a bunch of humble bundles. I think I picked up my copy for $1.
Mm-hmm.
Which, granted, is still more than the original 8-bit rendition. but it was still pocket change money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not the last revision to Cave Story that was done. The 3DS got a full-on remake, as in they remade all the assets into that 3D but 2D gameplay style.
2D, but with actual depth if you turn on the 3D mode.
Uh huh. Yeah, but anyway, this game was like the 3D version was pretty controversial because okay, there's no easy way to get around it. The 3D graphics look not as good as their 2D counterparts.
Which is not super uncommon when you have a really well done stylized 2D thing.
Yeah. It's like
2D tends to be a lot more timeless feeling.
Right. It's because initially the Cave Story 3D cost $40.
Mm-hmm.
This was as full fat as as a pricing you got on the 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, this game it was originally released as freeware, so there was a lot of grumbling around that, but it didn't erase the other versions of the game. Plus, I don't think it really mattered. Like nobody really brings up Cave Story 3D. Probably because it was so overpriced and underloved. Admittedly, I never had an interest in the game because of those reasons.
Same.
Yeah. That being said, the last official release, to my recollection, is the 2017 Switch version, which I think further remixed thing, like they adjusted a few other things. I don't remember offhand the details of what was rearranged in the Switch version, but it's not too far off the other versions of Cave Story. The big selling point of Cave Story Plus on the Nintendo Switch was it got a physical release with a full color manual. It's like the problem is it was once again backed by Nicholas. Apparently, Nicholas owns the IP to Cave Story, and there have been various rumors and allegations that the notable scumfuck Tyrone Rodriguez. I think I can be comfortable in saying that publicly now, given that fucking Kotaku article that got released last year, I think. That detailed a lot of the scumfuckery that that studio has engaged in over the years. Not all of it. Like, I knew that they were bad news, like when they were harassing a friend of mine, let's say, and yeah, not going to really go into details about that, but it was a thing, and yeah, fuck Tyrone. But apparently, like he may have manipulated Pixel to give up the rights to Cave Story, and I think that came up a lot in the development of his next game, Carol Blaster. Once again, not something I can say is definitive, but given all the stories that have come out, I would not be surprised if that was accurate. Like, that being said, if you don't feel like giving money to Nicholas, you can still get the original version of Cave Story for nothing. That's still out there. You can download it. It's perfectly serviceable. Like, perhaps the only issue is it doesn't have like the controller support that the Steam version has.
I forget. Does that version have an English version or?
What, the original version?
Yeah.
It does, but it has a different translation.
Yeah, I know that I knew that there were two translations. I wasn't sure which one came from.
Yeah. No. The original version does have its own official translation. That's the fan preferred translation. That's the one where Balrog says "huzzah" versus "oh yeah," among other idiosyncratic changes. But you'll be fine if you go with either translation, I'd say. Anyway, so we've talked a lot about the legacy of Cave Story, but what about the game itself? So first of all, some people identify this game as a Metroidvania title, and it's in the ballpark, I'd say, but it's not a true what we've come to understand a Metroidvania title to be.
Yeah, maybe there's not really very much in the way of upgrades to collect. You do get like heart tanks occasionally, and there are multiple weapons, but there are not many. There are only a few movement-based power-ups. Mostly when you're getting a new power-up or unlocking a new area, it's for a story reason or because you had to go get a key from somewhere to open up a place. And there's not really that much nonlinear progression possible, and there's really not even that much backtracking.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even a definition that worked back in 2004, because keep in mind, this is the period where we were still getting, actual Metroid games and actual Castlevania games in that style.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
2004. This is the year that Metroid Zero Mission got released, and it's right in between Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow. So, even in 2004, we knew what a Metroidvania game looked like, to the point where that term was first becoming in vogue. In fact, like in 2004, we weren't even sure how to classify this outside of using some permutation of Metroid and Castlevania. Want to know the other permutation? Castleroid. Not even making that up.
It's shorter, but it's got less of a ring to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can see why the other colloquialism stuck around.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people chuff under that designation, but well, here's the thing: nobody has come up with a better term. Oh, sure, alternatives have been offered up, but it's like you can't just throw something out there and expect it to replace. Like, you actually have to generate a good term that would replace this informal term. Yeah, it still hasn't happened with roguelikes.
What is it? Jim Sterling's making a go at search action for it now, but yeah.
Good luck with that.
Indeed.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, I'm not even opposed to that, because Metroidvania is such a clunky term. But we're getting off track here.
Mm-hmm.
Cave Story really, it's got it's like a first cousin of the Metroidvania.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like if you fuse that kind of game design with run and guns like Contra and Metal Slug.
There are a couple of bosses that definitely even get straight up into, this is a side-scrolling shooter now. Hope you practiced.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because Cave Story has, a few other legacies. Punishing difficulty is one. It's like, it's a fair difficulty, but it's still a difficult game. Like,
it's something you practice to get good at.
Yeah.
So there are a few specific traits that are common in indie games that this kind of starts. One is the kind of, well, some this might be for easiness, the retro even for its time art style, but still exceeding the limitations of that games in that style somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
It has a pretty cute art style, and a lot of the gameplay early on is fairly cute, but then the further you go into the game, there are more dark and complicated themes that come up. So that contrast that is popularized in things such as Undertale and stuff is probably traces largely back to this. There is a really high baseline of difficulty in the get good syndrome stuff, and the one that's most interesting to me is that this is arguably the thing that started the trend of indie games having really fucking obscure and difficult to execute secrets, including like special ending with super punishing gauntlet that you have to go through to get to it.
Yep. I mean, mind you, that's a tradition that goes back to, say, the NES. Not necessarily ultra hard ending thing, but definitely obtuse design. I'm just thinking of Goonies 2 right now. Like,
yeah,
that
but
game
having it be like,
was obtuse
yeah,
design.
you can do it the normal way, but like if you do everything this particular really weird way, you get the good ending.
Yeah. Because, yeah, you're going to need a walkthrough to get the good ending your first time through. There's no way around it.
There are
Because
specifically a few things that you only even get hints that another way of doing it was possible after you've passed the point of no return with that particular situation.
right. Because like some of the requirements to get the best ending, they just, they will not occur to you. They defy conventional gamer logic. Like, hey, here is this upgrade that is being offered to you. Oh, it turns out you have to turn that down. You have to turn down the first two upgrades in order to get the best ending.
And like, oh, hey, that looked interesting. Better ignore it.
Uh-huh.
Because
or
if you
hey,
even interact with it, you're completely locked out of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you a really good example of, where the game gives you a hint after the fact, the jetpack.
Yeah, that's specifically the ignore it.
Yeah.
At some point, you see Science Doctor falling, and if you talk to him, he gives you the jetpack, and then you see it's the jetpack .8.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that to progress. That is it's your major mobility upgrade for a lot of the early part of the game, although, ironically, one of the weapon upgrades you have to not do to get the best weapon also has a little bit of a mobility function that you can kind of rocket jump. But yeah, if you talk to him, you get the jetpack like 0.8, and the only hint you get is that 0.8, that means it's basically not finished, but you can't get the other one later. You have to completely ignore him, and then you can run into him later, and he'll say, "Oh, hey, I finished the jetpack," and then you get the final jetpack that you need to succeed at the final area.
Right. The jetpack 2.0.
Which has basically full flight, I think. Like,
yes.
It doesn't really have a fuel limitation.
And there are other conditions. You have to save curly brace. You have to find the tow cable to save curly brace, and there are a few other things. My point is,
it's not just like one thing you have to do. It's a bunch of things you have to do all of, or it doesn't matter.
Like, and I'll admit, not even, I can't really think of a modern indie game that does this amount of obtuseness.
Yeah, but it's arguably the thing that made that kind of obtuseness famous.
No, I definitely agree.
Oh, another part of the difficulty in the gameplay is, aside from that, if you want to get the good thing, you have to forgo pretty much all of your mobility upgrades. Camp Story has a weapon upgrade system, or an experience system, that is arguably Gradius-like, in that you beat enemies and they drop experience, and when you pick up the experience, the weapon you are holding will gain experience and level up to be more powerful. But if you get hit, you lose some. I don't think you lose all of it in one hit, but it's usually enough to knock you down pretty fast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's slow degrade.
Yeah, so to have a good weapon, you have to be not getting hit, like, at all.
And good luck with that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of enemies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a lot of enemies, but bosses are they get difficult after a while.
Definitely on the bullet hell side sometimes.
And in terms of like actual storytelling, this game is a masterclass of environmental storytelling. Because there's not all that much text in the game. There's a fair amount.
All of it is NPCs. Protagonist is actually silent.
Yeah, but a lot of the like the egg corridor here. When you come back to it in the future, those eggs will hatch, and they turn into enemies you have to deal with.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of things that the environment that you pretty much find out about later.
Hell, even the intro is a tease of storytelling, because what the intro is telling you but not telling you is the secret of the crown.
Mm-hmm. And in point of fact, you don't even actually find out in game. I mean, I think everybody knows it now. It's on all kinds of websites and like advertisements for the game, but you don't actually find out the protagonist's name until like really close to the end of the game.
Well, it's also subsequent versions. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm trying to remember if it was Plus or if it was 3D that offered curly brace mode, which was basically gender swap mode. Instead of playing as Quote, you played as curly brace, and Quote served as the function of curly brace.
Because they are in universe fairly interchangeable aside from circumstance.
Well, I mean, so the thing about both of them is they are combat robots.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they have those lines on their faces and their skin is all white.
Mm-hmm.
Which you might not notice because you don't find other humans and you could just think, oh, that's just a stylistic thing until pretty late.
I think there are other humans, but Sue has been
turned. Is Misery an actual human? I'm not sure. She looks kind of like one, but she doesn't act like one.
No, Sue is a human who has been turned into a Mimiga. I think
humans who look like humans.
Yeah. But she's an actual human.
Anyway.
It's like thinking other humans show up. It's been a while.
There are a couple of human characters, but they're not early on, I don't think.
Yeah. And also, your character is the classic silent protagonist, so he doesn't really
possibly literally doesn't speak. Like, Link is assumed to at least be saying yes and no sometimes, for example.
Yeah.
I believe Quote literally has like a broken voice box or something for most of the game.
Wouldn't surprise me. Like, once again, I think that might have been something that was revised in a later version. That's the other issue with having multiple different versions. You can't, not always sure what was in what.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not actually a super expert at this game in terms of experience. But I've read about it a lot because I found a lot of the things that it does interesting.
I've played it a couple of times. Like, it's like, God, it's been a long time since my last playthrough, but I got to Balos. It's just, that, the road to hell is the road to hell. Like,
but is it paved with good intentions?
No, it's paved with very red spikes.
The way to the road to hell is paved with good intentions and really obscure execution of various tasks.
Mm-hmm. But no, it's like the extra special final boss area is definitely gonna test your fucking skills. Now, also anyone who calls this thing the Dark Souls of whatever is just fucking wrong. Like, Dark Souls is not just fucking difficulty, people. Like, Dark Souls is a very specific. Like, Dark Souls is also known for its methodical fighting style.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue that this has a little bit of that.
Yeah,
And the like, there's lots of lore, but it's like not easy to get.
yeah, but it's mostly when people say something is the Dark Souls of something, they mean it's ultra difficult. That's where we get stupid shit like, oh hey, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy is the Dark Souls of platformers.
I think
Yeah,
you can
that-
still
that
hear
is
your
a-
eye twitching from that one.
Yeah, that is the thing that happened, and no, it's not. Okay, because Dark Souls isn't. Yeah, it's like Dark Souls is things like optional storytelling within the environment, but it's also like a very deliberate, methodical combat system, which is emphasis on the methodical. It's very slow.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it made. That's what it made it stand out, because a lot of action is fast. This game is no exception. Let's see. And yeah, I think we've covered our bases with Cave Story here. Like, Cave Story may not be as renowned as it was, say, 10 years ago. Like, maybe like the height of Cave Story when Plus was new and, appearing on consoles. But yeah, it's still a great game. It's still, one of the most important indie titles ever released, for a whole host of reasons, and is still worth playing today. It holds up. Once again, if you want to experience it, it's free. You can go get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want the more advanced version, that's also readily accessible. It's not just on Steam, but actually, I think a lot of the places where you could get it aren't available anymore, like WiiWare and DSiWare. Yeah, those are actually services that no longer exist. But yeah, there's still the modern Switch version. Don't think it ever got a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One release.
Been 360 or PS3 for that
I
matter.
know, like, the original game got ported to like the PSP, but once again, that's like in the vein of unofficial Doom ports. So, point of order is Cave Story Plus is accessible, and the original Cave Story is still out there for free. Just if you haven't played it, probably should go play it. At least if difficulty isn't an issue for you, because yeah, this game is going to kick your ass. And if you are determined to play without a guide, good luck to you. Anyway, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead, so no Friday show. The guest never got back to us. So that's not happening. So on Sunday, on the Sunday reviews, we will have reviews of Something Ate My Aliens. This is a game that has actually been plaguing me for a few weeks because I had a very specific issue with it that I thought had gotten resolved, but no, it kept doing more fuckery. So Twilight's getting the nod here.
Mm-hmm.
Because they thankfully gave me another code. This is why I like getting multiple codes in case shit doesn't work. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, We got Desperados 3. Petty's been on that one. Let's see. Robozaro. Nintendo Switch version. Though I did pick up the PC version. It's an interesting game, and it's almost a good game, in my estimation. And let me see here. The game I picked up as a replacement, Polygon, which is a pretty simple twin-stick shooter. It's decent-ish. More on that on Sunday. And indeed, until then, I shall wish you good gaming.